You sure can.
Good evening. I would like to call the April 30th special called meeting of the Milton Planning Commission to order. Please, would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a special meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I am Chairperson Judy Birds. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on zoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications, comprehensive land use plan and plan map, and other related plans and amendments to the zoning ordinance. In attendance tonight, we have Vic Jones, Brian McNeese, Kurt Nolte, Commissioner Trey James, Commissioner Fred Edwards, constituting a quorum of this body. Absent this evening is Commissioner Sumit Shah. I'll entertain a motion for consideration and adoption of the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda for April 30th as presented.
Second?
It's been moved by Commissioner Nolte and seconded by Commissioner McNeese to adopt the agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Are there any general public comments? No. Okay, I will close general public comment. Do we have comments for the other agenda items?
Yes, we do.
Okay. The petitions will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures for conducting this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains with the allotted time. The staff of the Community Development Department will be keeping track of time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Each speaker must fill out a speaker card before speaking and leave it with the staff member of the Community Development Department. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. When an opponent of the rezoning action has made within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating more than $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of the relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and have not filed timely a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak on your behalf. Each applicant has properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted at each site, the matter has been advertised, and notices have been mailed to the property owners affected by the zoning as required by the Milton zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the City of Milton Mayor and City Council for final disposition. The Mayor and City Council hearing will be held approximately 3.5 weeks from this hearing on the third Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in council chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with various agencies and departments, both internal and external to the city. The staff's recommendations, findings, and conclusions are here before us in written form, which has been made available to all petitioners and to the public. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue with the person speaking, or outbursts. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silent. All remarks will be addressed by the Planning Commission. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you would expect to receive yourself. In addition, the applicant should not submit material to the Planning Commission during the meeting unless requested to do so by the Commission. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the Commission in consideration of your application should be submitted to the staff of the Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the Commission. Finally, to the applicant, if your petition is deferred in accordance with the Milton zoning ordinance, you are required to update or obtain a new sign for reposting. Failure to update or repost will result in further delay. There are no exceptions. This is a special called meeting. We will not be considering any minutes or preliminary plats. Moving on to the consideration of text amendments to the Unified Development Code for the City of Milton, Georgia. The item is RZ 2507. Article 1, Introductory Provisions. Article 7B, Deerfield Form-Based Code. Article 8, Use Provisions. Article 9, Site Development. And Article 13, Definitions. Regarding changes to the development requirements, uses, signage, incentives, and the regulating plan, zoning map, for the Deerfield Form-Based Code. This item will be presented by our zoning manager, Mrs. Robin McDonald. Robin?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Planning Commissioners. Thank you for coming to this special called meeting. Tonight, I'm going to review RZ 25-07 as was sounded tonight. So we have been working feverishly since we did meet with the City Council on Monday and got some feedback regarding the proposed text amendment, and we have also included those suggestions. You all received a version of this last week for the previous meeting, and again, I apologize for the lateness, but as of last night, provided you the updates, and I hope I've made it as clear as possible. In the memo, I have highlighted the items that are new or may not have been discussed in any length before. So with that said, I can start to go through it. I'm going to kind of toggle between the memo, and then if there's certain things that you want to look at, we can flip over to the actual verbiage. Let me do this first. Let me get through everything and then jot down your questions. And then we have some public comments, and then we can go into the deliberation of it. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. With that said, so we have various articles. The first one is Article 1, which is the introductory provisions. And the reason why we brought this under consideration is that's where the ordinance speaks to the regulating plan or the zoning map for Deerfield. So if our AV guy can swap back over to our nice. Upside down. So I want to be able to show everybody online if anybody's watching. This is the proposed regulating plan. And if I can get I'm going to just go through some issues that we're proposing to change Not very much at all. We have created what's called sub-districts here, so different characteristics of the area. So we have North Deerfield, which is basically everything north of Bethany Bend and up to the county line. We have Central Deerfield, which is south of Bethany Bend and then south of Stone Creek Church here. Then we have South Highway 9, which is this blue. It's the largest area, so it comes across McGinnis Ferry, down 400, and then across Webb Road, as well as coming down Deerfield. Thank you. Much better. Okay, and then it comes down Deerfield and then up on the west side here. So that is South Highway 9. Then lastly is South Deerfield Parkway, which is the south side of Webb and all the way across to 400, along 400, and then over to Morris and a little bit of Deerfield Parkway, and then come back up the backside between Walmart and what will be the new ballpark. So those are new to the map. That's something we haven't had in the past. So just want to give you that. Also, here it says in this southern part, it says minimum 8-story building height zone. We will be deleting that because in the past, 16 stories were the max, but now as we go through the text amendments, the highest height will be 8 stories. So there's no need for that maximum 8-story yellow. Well, it's a dotted line, so it gets a little messy in there. So that'll be gone. I just want to also point to you and reiterate that there is a maximum 2-story building height zone that starts south of the Stone Creek Church and across, and then goes north, and it keeps on going, and it includes everything north of Bethany Bend to the county line. So we're going to clean that up a little bit and make it more obvious that it is still a 2-story height limit zone, but just want to put it into the record that that has not changed at all. Okay. Lastly, the main thing the only change that we have made from the map is on the Stone Creek Church property. There was a little bit of T5 in the corner here, and everything else was T2. So the history with that is when this was created in 2013-14, the church, Stone Creek, had kept their AG1. They were AG1 in Fulton County. They had received a use permit for a church. So we just duplicated, kept the same AG1 zoning. We didn't keep the zoning, but the equal of that in form-based code is T2. So that's why there's a lot of green here, and I don't think I have the exhibit showing how it sits right now, where it's mostly all T2, even up to Highway 9. So this area, we're proposing T5 and then T4 that runs along the western edge of the remainder of the non-residential north and south of Highway 9. Again, remember, this is still a 2-story height limit. So that's basically all that we're looking at right now for the actual physical regulating plan. And just as a note, we're not, it's not included here, but there's nothing being done with southern part, which is considered North Main Street. That is remaining the same. Okay. So if we can go back.
Robin, just a real
Yeah.
quick, I'd like the record to reflect that Commissioner Shaw has joined.
Okay, perfect. Can you record that? Okay. Now, we're going to get into one of the primary articles that are going to be amended. The first one is delete 5-acre proposal. This is not how it is currently, to propose to delete 5-acre zone density requirements of 10,000 square feet per acre, and it would just default to the T4 density. That's a proposal. Allowance for reduced units 8 to 4 for hotels when used in mixed-use development within T5 and T6 in South Deerfield Parkway subdistrict. So you all have the regulating plan in front of you. So that is just for the southern portion, and if it's developed with a mixed use. So let me switch a little bit. I feel like I want to go over to the actual verbiage, and I'll just use the memo as my guide. So I'm going to flip-flop. Feel like I'll be more genuine and everybody can see what is going on. Deerfield memo. That would be, okay. So I just also want to make a point here for the audience that I skipped through many in the packet. There's multiple different areas. There's the charts. So there's multiple different types of charts. So I just took out any chart that wasn't applicable for this discussion. So I don't want people to think that, oh, I've just intentionally done it. It is very much intended to make this a easier process, but nothing is being changed in those other either crabapple form-based code or the AG1 traditional type zoning districts. So I just want to make that point. Okay. So if we go to 7-67, okay, here under density calculations, this is where we're proposing that basically there's not an exception to 5-acre road, but that the now 5-acre road will comply with whatever the transect zone is, which is T4 as far as density. And then here we talk about what I just mentioned about reducing the density or 4 guest rooms for each building unit instead of 8 for those situations that are in T5 and T6 South Deerfield Parkway. So let me just go up to here just to remind everybody. So when we're proposing to delete that 10,000 square feet per acre, it reverts to this 1 dwelling unit for each building unit. So that's, if this is to be approved by the city council, that's now what would be required. Okay. So the next item is on 7-71. So this is a new incentive, no pun intended, because it says development incentives. So this is a whole new section for the Deerfield form-based code. And basically, it states that the use of development incentives is intended to encourage the voluntary inclusion of public amenities on private properties. Landowners can voluntarily choose to build publicly accessible amenities on their private property. These amenities can include open space, structured parking, and trails. In return for voluntarily participating in this program, private property owners receive the option for additional residential density ratio in either the T5 or the T6 transect zones within Central Deerfield, South Highway 9, or South Deerfield Parkway subdistricts. Okay. So here it states that in the T5 transect zone, in these particular subdistricts, they may receive the option for additional residential density ratios or density using the following. So inclusion of 20% civic space rather than the required 10% civic space allows an additional 10% residential ratio. Inclusion of parking structure for 50% of required parking within the development allows an additional 3 units per acre. And an inclusion of public access trails and trailhead allows an additional 10% residential ratio. Let me take a break here. So before I get into the weeds of this, let me show you a chart that basically demonstrates what we're talking about. So this doesn't seem like it's Latin. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
This is 40.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I'm gonna move this. Okay, so what we have before you is a breakdown of how these development incentives can occur. So in the North Deerfield T4, it's really nothing. There's no incentives for that area, anything north of Bethany Bend. Okay, and then we go back, and we have the map over here for your convenience. For Central Deerfield, South Highway 9, and South Deerfield, this whole area, if you're zone T5, when you ask for, well, whether you develop, you can only develop townhomes, and we require a 50-50 ratio. So it would be 50, let's say if you had 100 acres, then half of that, we're just going to make this simple, okay? 50 units of townhomes and 50 units of non-residential, 50 times 2250, okay? So if the developer wants to say, hey, I don't want to have to do so much non-residential, if they're willing to initiate some of these or all of these initiatives, they can change the ratio. So for public open space, you're increasing their open space or civic space to 20%, they get a 10% ratio change. So then it would become 60% residential, 40% non-residential. If they say, hey, I'm going to do a public access trails and trailhead, we add another 10%. So then it goes up to 70% of residential versus non-residential. So here we have this 70-30 is a max ratio with incentives in this T5 area, in T5 within these sub-districts, okay? So just as a reminder, not a reminder, but just to inform you, previously, townhomes were required to have a use permit, and we'll talk about it in more detail later under Article 8. But just for informational purposes, townhomes will be proposed permitted as a right, no use permit, but does require the mixed use ratio, okay? And then multifamily requires still a use permit. And then conditions for each amenity will be developed by staff. Example, a townhouse multifamily can abut an existing street if they include a 40-foot linear park. That was a little typo, but in the ordinance, it's 40 feet. So now we walk down to the southern part in T6, where a lot of T6 remains or is located in South Deerfield Parkway. So we start again with the 50-50 ratio here. And by right, they get 12 units per acre. And then we'll just step through here. Public open space, if that 100 acres, they say, okay, or yeah, 100 acres, they'll do 10% more with increased open space, then they get only 5% more ratio. So that goes up to 55. And then the trails and trailhead is another 5%. Then we have something a little bit different than above is if they are willing to construct a parking structure, 50% of the required parking, they would add 3 units per acre. So instead of a max of 12 units per acre, they could go up to 15 units per acre if they need to. And then finally, as a city facility, it would have to be council approved. Approval is required, and they could have a bump of another 5%. So the max that they could get with the ratio incentives is 65-35. Okay? And then again, just to reiterate, townhomes are permitted as of right, with no use permit, but again, requires the mixed use with the required ratio. And multifamily requires a use permit, as always. And conditions for each amenity will be developed by staff. Okay? So that is the premise for the other changes for the development incentives. So hopefully that'll help you understand all the verbiage that we're going through. Okay.
If you want questions, wait till the end, I think you said on the questions.
Yeah, if you can just write them down and then we'll just go from there. Okay, so basically this next page codifies everything that I just said. And I will say that there are certain requirements. So if you're going to do trails in a trailhead, you can't just say, I'm going to do it and do it for 50 feet and it ends in the middle of nowhere. It has to be appropriately marked trailhead and trails, which trails must connect to public streets, 2 unisex bathrooms open to the public during normal park or business hours, provide 3 public parking spaces nearby the trailhead. And then in regards to the civic building site requirements, it must be listed within an approved city plan, like a Parks and Rec plan, you know, or the, let's say if the CIE, which is the plan that kind of lists all the different things that could be paid for by the by impact fees. So it's not just a developer saying, you really need this, city, I'm going to provide you this. It has to be something that we need and then ultimately approved by the city council. And then provide associated parking, which may be shared, and include building design and materials approved by the DRB. Okay? And then these are some compliance requirements in C. In no event can the development incentives allowed in this section exceed the total allowable TDR density maximum. So again, that's probably not going to it's like you can't exceed what the TDR maximum is in total. In no event can the development incentives allowed in this section exceed a ratio of 65% within the T6, and then in no event can the development incentives in this section exceed a ratio of 70% within the T5 of the areas we spoke about. And then in no event may any component of the development incentive allowed within this section have application to any site not in the Deerfield form-based code area. So this does not apply to Crabapple. This is just made for Deerfield. Okay, so that's a lot. The next section. So as I mentioned with the regulating plan, on number E, we created the sub-districts. So this is at the top, top of this page of 774. And then also we deleted a zone where the maximum height of buildings is 12 stories, regardless of the district. So write that down. Okay, the next section is about landscape buffers. The first thing is, so many times we require in certain situations when a property is adjacent to a T2 or it's adjacent to a zoning that's outside the district, we require buffers. So for sites 4 acres or less, it's a 50-foot wide undisturbed buffer and a 10-foot improvement setback. Or if it is greater than 4 acres, it's a 75-foot wide with a 10-foot improvement setback. So now we're saying, in the past, we did not want anything to be in those buffers, but this says that trails and buffers must be soft trails or boardwalk where appropriate, no other hard paved surfaces allowed. So that is a change from what we've done in the past. Another one is in regards to buffers. The required buffer adjacent to T2 or AG1 zone property or adjacent to property not located in the district shall be reduced by an amount equal to the required buffer on the adjacent property. So it sounds like a math problem from 5th grade, right? But basically what it's saying is in the past, especially when it was Fulton County, let me give you this example where Avonsong is adjacent to a 10-acre property along Highway 9. So back in the day, that piece of property along Highway 9 was zoned AG1. So you had Avonsong coming in at 4 to 5 units per acre. And so the zoning ordinance at the time said you have to provide a buffer to this nice AG1 property. So in their plat, it shows a 50-foot wide buffer. Well, Avonsong is not within the form-based code. And so when this 10-acre property along Highway 9 gets developed, instead of dinging them another 75 feet of buffer on their side, what this is saying is, okay, we're going to count the 50 foot on the Avonsong, and you only need to provide 25 foot for a total of 75 foot. So if that makes sense, that's where we're trying to kind of be smart about our buffers. Okay, and lastly, with buffers, buffers are not required when development is adjacent to T2 properties developed with non-residential uses. So again, you know, if you were going, if you were in a T4 and you were doing a single family residential subdivision and you're adjacent to T2, but it's developed with a church or with a landscape business or whatever, then you don't have to provide the buffer because you're residential and they're non-residential. So if anybody should have provided a buffer, it should be the non-residential people to the residential. So basically what this is saying, in certain cases, you don't have to provide a buffer adjacent to T2 depending on what the use is, if it's a non-residential use. Okay? So the next item is 7-79, where we talk about bicycle network must conform to the design requirements outlined in the Deerfield Urban Design Manual, which is right here. Okay. And then this is a cleanup about 5 Acre Road, basically saying that they would need to comply with the retrofit of existing thoroughfares, whereas before they were not required to. Page 82. Okay, so this is specific to 5 Acre Road. The requirements within that agreement and what was codified was that they would provide a 20-foot landscape strip planted to buffer standards. Okay, and so we're proposing not to have that. Okay, under civic zones, this is, we're talking about civic spaces, and in the form-based code, it talks about different types of civic spaces. Now we're creating a new type. It's called a linear park. And in 5, and then Okay, so we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. And then here, under 7, we're talking about stormwater, that areas used for permanent water storage may only be counted towards civic space if such areas meet the following conditions. Basically, they're going to create a pond or a lake, and slopes shall not be no greater than 4:1. And there would be walkways around it, and there would be some amenities like lighting, landscaping, seating, or such as a dock or arbor. And then any outlet control structures and head walls must be cladded with stone or brick. So basically, prior in civic spaces, you could not count this. Let's say if you created a really beautiful stormwater facility, you couldn't count that toward your civic space. So what we're saying is now you can. Okay. So in regards to trails, again, that mention about must conform with the requirements of the Deerfield Urban Design Manual. And then in regards to private frontages, this is where we have created this 40-foot linear park for all property and lots located adjacent to public rights-of-way. All residential uses must be set back a minimum of 40 feet from the edge of right-of-way, which must include required landscape strip or easements for creation of a linear park. Building setbacks will be measured from the interior edge of the linear park or from a newly constructed street adjacent to the linear park. So this gives the allowance to be a greater setback than what exists right now in the code. Okay. 7. We're going to skip to 87. So this is the mention that I talked about on the regulating plan, that this mentions the 12-story height limit. So we're getting rid of that because now it's going to be 8. Just in general, it's going to be 8. So we no longer need that. We still have the 2-story building height zone. So that's specific to building form. Okay, on 88. We're proposing here, it's a little hard to see, under 9, the maximum number of attached townhouse units in a building is now going to be 6, maximum. Okay, then we're going to go to 89. And here, in the past, when we needed to have mixed use, so in this case, we're gonna, for like multifamily, we counted either, let's go back to the 100 acres, you'd have 50 units of residential and 50 units of non-residential. We would, so then that would be, you could have it through 50-50. But before we said, hey, well, so long as every non-residential building, or no, every residential building had a first floor of non-residential, you didn't have to meet the 50-50. So now what we're proposing is to delete in A, that's not a way to meet your ratio. Now you actually have to provide square footage of non-residential to residential. Okay? Not to say that you can't still count. Let's say if a developer wanted to go ahead and put some non-residential below the multifamily, we're still going to count the square footage toward their non-residential. It just doesn't give them a free card to say, hey, I've already met that requirement. Okay, 89. Skip something here. There we go. Yeah, sorry. So under B, I went back to 89. Required non-residential functions shall be identified and approved by the city council with, as part of the multifamily use permit approval and shall be built concurrent with the multifamily functions. So this is where we don't want a developer to come in and say, we're going to build our 100 units of multifamily and just forget about the 100 units of non-residential. That during the use permit process, and obviously you would be looking at that as well, there would be making conditions of exactly how they would be required to be built concurrently. Okay, on 91, this is actually a section we dealt with last week, fixing the detention retention. I just wanted to capture it in this so we didn't forget it. Then for off-street parking, just clarifying that parking for residential uses, not just single family, is in the table. Oh. Okay, on 97, we're getting through here, guys. Okay, the Design Review Board has had a lot of discussions about buildings with exterior stairs. So this is a set of regulations that dictate how that must happen. So I won't get into every detail of that, but you can read it. And then we're not allowing cantilevered balconies are prohibited. And going to 99. So this is another provision for outdoor dining patios may be temporarily enclosed by removable enclosures from November 1 through March 31st. The enclosures must, and there's a whole lot of different regulations. And this is, again, something that the DRB has reviewed and has mandated for when anybody comes to them that wants to do this type of enclosure. Okay. Okay, and then there's another section about deleting stucco from foundations. And the next page is roof pitches must be 6/12 or is approved by the city architect. Now we're going to go to the tables. So we're going to kind of skip through the rest of the verbiage and let's go to table 3B. Okay, there is a mentioned here, it's kind of hard to read, but you can probably see it better on your hard copies about existing thoroughfares and how they should be developed. And we're deleting before it excluded 5 Acre Road. Okay, now we're going to go to table 5.
What page?
Oh, 7-114.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of tables. Okay. So this one item that is throughout the different types of civic spaces is may contain public art as approved by the city council. And then at the very bottom, we have G, linear park is another type of civic space. I don't have a pretty little diagram, but it's in words. Table 6. Okay, so there's the first thing that's mentioned, that we deleted the maximum 12-story building part. And then here we have, let me just read what it is. Restricted the maximum height in T6 to 8 stories. So this T6 is now going to be 8 stories, and it's in another chart. This is just a diagram. And then new footnote, and let's go to the footnote, because this whole page is going to go away because it's all about T6 and nothing's going to apply. So let me see. I think I can get this bigger for you. There we go. So now we have a new footnote Number 4 states office and hotel uses may be up to 8 stories, and all other uses shall not exceed 4 stories. Okay. And then restricted the maximum height in T4 open to 3 stories. And table 7. So that's going to be the next one. So table 7, again, allowance for the linear park for the building placement. And again, the mention of the linear park for private frontages on 118. Now we're going to go to 9B. I just added these. They're not a true added. I just wanted you guys to be clarified what you were looking at. So that was already there, but it wasn't showing up. So here is, we're going back to building unit function exchange. So I'm deleting the reference to 5 Acre Road, and that it would, as I stated before, be just considered one dwelling unit for each building unit. And then we have that allowance for 4 guest rooms for each building unit in a mixed-use development in T5 and T6, as mentioned before. Now we're going to go to table 11. And let me just make this bigger. Okay. So the first change occurs under the row of TDR. If you go all the way over, the max TDR used to be 36 units per acre in T6. Now it's 16 units per acre. And then one row below, we've added by incentive, and there's no incentives up through T4, but beginning in T5, remember how we had the structured parking, you could get up to 3 units per acre in both T5 and T6. Okay. So another difference we have here is if you look under E, lot occupation, and we go over to starting in its T4, T5, T6, the lot width of a new lot goes from 18 feet to 28 feet in T4, T5, and T6. So that is trying to enable a bit of a lower density, since we're allowing townhomes to be by right. You know, we want to make sure they're nice and beefy and of good quality. Okay, so now in F, under setbacks, we have some footnotes, and it is even harder to see. So make it. So there's a number 7 by the setbacks for T4, 5, and 6. So we'll look at that when we get down there. And again, here we go to the building height. And we deleted 6. So that was the reference that you could go up to 4 stories if you were T4 open. So we're getting rid of that. So in T4, let me make sure I'm looking at it right. Yep, T4, it is 3 stories unless you're in that 2-story height limit area. So that takes precedent. Okay, so that's that. And then let's go down to the actual notes. It's a little, let me get back here. Okay, so we deleted 6, which was T4 open building height limits of T5 apply is no longer. And then there's just additional restrictions for T4 permissive and 6. And then, well, 4 is already there. We didn't do anything. And then 7 is greater setbacks may be required based on that linear park. And number 8, which I apologize, I couldn't get the justification right, but if you go to the memo in the yellow part, it says under little 6, added footnote number 8 to say, see table 6 for additional height restrictions. Superscript 8 is adjacent to T6 building height. Page 7-123. Top of page not viewable, but we'll need to figure out. Sorry about that. Okay. The rest of the so there is an addition, and I don't see it here, and I could swear that I put it in, but Bob, about the height. Something's in T6. Oh, yes. Hotels could be up to, hotels and office can be 8 stories, but we're proposing that multifamily only have a max of 4 stories. So, yeah. So I'll make that happen in here. I thought I did, but maybe I did and I can't see it right now, but only office and hotel can be 8. And then multifamily is 4. Even if you had a non-residential ground level, then it could only be 3 more stories above the ground level. Okay, so now we're going to go to the uses. Okay. The first item under Article 8 is going to start on page 8-19. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Make this a little bit bigger so everybody can see it. Thank you for working with me on this. I know this is a lot. Thank you. Okay. A, under Article 8, the first item is to allow single-family homes by use permit and the council to determine the number of units permitted within a mixed use. So prior, we didn't allow any single-family in T5 and T6, but we felt like that it'd be nice to have a variety of housing types in those districts. But again, not just, oh, they're going to come in and fill all of T5 or T6 with single family. They have to have a use permit and it has to be approved with the number of units. Okay. Now under, we're proposing to delete duplex in entirety. So there wouldn't be no more duplexes. Under townhouses, it had been permitted under T4 and T4 permissive. And that was with the 5 acre. There was an exception. I mean, that was the only place it was allowed was at 5 acres. So we're just getting rid of that and proposing that there be no allowance for townhomes in 5 acre road zone. And then in T4 open, there can't be any townhouses. And then in T5, it would be, in T6, it would be allowed by right. But again, remember when we talked about having to be mixed use, okay? Triplex, quadplex, all being deleted. Loft apartment, which a loft apartment is obviously like a mixed use where you have a small building of non-residential with residential above, and I believe it can't exceed 30 units. So we deleted that in T4 permissive and T4 open, and allowing it by right in T5 and T6. Again, that is like a small building with mixed use. Multifamily is, we deleted the use permit out of T4. It wasn't ever allowed in T4 permissive. We've deleted out of a use permit in T4 open, and it remains in T5 and T6. So senior housing is the type of use permit that we allow everywhere, and it's with, it has to be 55 and over and for sale only. We've deleted all of live work type housing, and then work live. We've deleted everything but at T6. Okay. We'll go down. Okay, private museum. Okay, throw it in there as a permitted use. I'm not sure why it was by warrant. Again, it would have to go before a design review board and all that. So we see that that's a non-issue. Make sure I don't skip anything. And we'll deal with the superscripts and asterisks after we go through this. Check cashing establishment, we're getting rid of them in total. So these are some different uses that we feel like is based upon the different meetings of the Deerfield destination that, you know, it was just communicated to us that, you know, we really want a high quality development in the area and that these can have a negative impact. Landscape business, for whatever reason, was allowed by right, and now we're just saying it has to have a use permit. A pawn shop, we're not even allowing at all. Getting rid of that as a warrant. Same thing with auto and truck sales and leasing. We're recommending to delete them altogether. And then automotive specialty shop, which is like a tire store, oil change. We have a lot of them already. Obviously, they are grandfathered in, and so long as they stay in, you know, that doesn't stop business for more than 6 months, then they can change ownership, change companies. It's not a problem. Car wash principal. So this is your main car wash, and it's the same thing. We're recommending that we not allow it at all for new ones. Okay, the parking, there's a little footnote or superscript, and I'll talk about that at the bottom. And then not having a recycling center where you collected the recycling. I'm not, you know, we don't really need that. Okay, I think there's an administrative seasonal business use. This, for whatever reason, wasn't in there. This is like the Home Depot Christmas tree, business around Christmas, or if you had pumpkins, that kind of thing, that would be allowed administratively. Okay. So these are the table notes, and I did a little digging because it was a little confusing what number 1 was. It didn't make any sense that said T4 open. I think it was an oversight when we did the UDC, because what's T4 have to do with T1, T2? But what it really meant was this table, and it's further up, this table notwithstanding, all senior housing shall comply with 8.3.1J. So basically that's saying that you can have it anywhere, and that's what that table note was. And then 2 includes T5 limited subject to certain sections, so that stays the same. Number 3 is T4 permissive. Again, this is the references to additional restrictions for 5 Acre Road. I went through them and we'll go through them, but there still are some that apply. So we're just going to leave that there. Also, financial establishments are only allowed in 5 Acre Road zone. So we're just leaving that there. I don't think that's anything that is objectionable. Number 5, this was a key where previously it stated residential uses are prohibited on any parcel abutting Highway 9, excluding 5 Acre Road zone, except when located in a vertically mixed-use building. So now what we see as the Deerfield, destination plan is that we would allow residential uses along Highway 9 abutting it, so long as there was a 40-foot linear park in front of it. And then we're saying that, so because it talks about residential uses and when it's except excluding the 5 Acre Road. So before it's like, okay, now it's going to be consistent with the rest of the corridor. So because we're saying you don't have to have mixed use there, but you can have residential with a 40-foot linear park in front of it, and that would include the 5 Acre Road zone. And then lastly, 6, and this is what was under parking, parking structures do not count toward non-residential square footage when calculating development incentive allocation. I think that was under parking. That's 6. Yes, it was called parking. There it is. Okay. Okay, now we don't have very much more to go, but we're going to go into what the definitions and development regulations for the different uses. So under residential uses, I'm going to shrink this back a little bit. Okay. Prior, we did not have any specific use standards under Deerfield single-family homes. So now this is basically saying that on page 8-25, that single-family homes located within T5 and T6 transect zones and part of a mixed-use development requires a use permit. And the number of single-family homes shall be determined at the time of the use permit consideration by the city council. So that's a new section. In regards to townhouses, and so I just want to clarify that townhouse is synonymous with row house, because I know when we first adopted Deerfield form-based code, some of the charts, all the charts referred to townhouses as row houses, but in definitions it's synonymous. And then when we did the UDC or created the UDC, we switched the verbiage over to townhouse. And so here, the maximum number of townhouse dwelling units in a building is 6, as we mentioned before, and townhouses are permitted on sites where more than 50% of the total floor area is dedicated to office, retail, or lodging functions. And then here, it states that required non-residential functions must be built concurrent with townhomes and shall be determined at the time of the approval of the preliminary plat by the director. So if you don't have to go through a use permit, and at the time, so it's like, okay, how do you determine to make sure that the residential and non-residential are being concurrently built? It would be at the time you all would see it as a preliminary plat. We would take your recommendations. You could look at it and give recommendations to the director of how that could happen. And then under, let's see if there's any, in multifamily, we just cleaned up some building requirements. Let's see, when calculating outdoor amenity space, civic spaces, blah, 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 the applicable zoning district may be included. And then all residential units must be accessed from a conditioned interior hallway. So we don't have the old-fashioned campus style where you have an exterior hallway. And then again, this reference of at least 50% of dwelling units above the first story must have balcony. Oh, no, this is just deleting that requirement of balconies. Okay, and I believe that is it for that. And then we did not have any changes in site development, Article 9. And then within definitions, we have linear park, which states with respect to form-based codes, an outdoor area dedicated for public use. It is adjacent to a public thoroughfare with a combination of landscape and hardscape elements such as plazas, fountains, benches, and tables. Additional shade tree plantings should be planted as approved by the city arborist within public gathering places and along pedestrian paths. And then the sub-district, we never had that before, with respect to form-based codes, define geographic areas within the regulating plan. And so that concludes my review of the text amendments. I know that some of the planning commissioners had asked to see some of the economic. Do you want to wait on that after your questions?
Good questions.
Okay.
So at this point, do we want to take public comment
We
and
can.
then do all the questions for Robin? Is that okay?
Sure.
They've been
Okay.
waiting very patiently.
Yeah.
Great. So I will
Yes.
now open the public hearing. Just as a reminder, please approach the podium when your name is called and identify yourself with your name, your address, and if you're representing an organization. Those in support will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the position. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time is extended for one side, then the same allotted time extension will be provided to the other time.
Okay, we have two comments, one to be read into the record and one public comment that is here tonight. that we will
So
call on.
Robin, will you call the first either read or speaker?
Yes. The first I'm going to read into is Glenn Martin at 235 Hereford Road. He says, unfortunately, I am out of town today and will not be able to attend tonight's planning commission meeting. I would like to provide, let me start the thing. Sorry. That'll be fine. I would like to provide the following comments related to the proposed changes of the Deerfield Form-Based Code, and if possible, have them read for the record. Robin, thank you for your time and guidance today on the phone. All, thank you very much for your consideration and for all that you do for our community. Comments for the record. I am in general support of the proposed changes to the Deerfield Form-Based Code. I am specifically in support of the proposed change to Article 8, Item B, to delete townhouse within T4, T4 open, and T4 permissive. While I don't see it expressly stated in the agenda documents, it is my understanding that the city has expressed the intent to exempt the parcels at 2655 Acre Road from the proposed removal of townhomes. If this is accurate, then I am opposed to that position. I respectfully request that the city reevaluate this position, and if possible, I would very much like to see these parcels included in and subject to the proposed removal of townhomes. As the city is seeking to refine its vision for this area by considering these needed changes to the Deerfield Form-Based Code and by taking more control over the State Route 9 redesign, I believe that the city and its residents would be best served by implementing a unified vision. Exempting the parcels at the front of 5 Acre Road from this important revision could compromise this vision and allow for development that does not meet the safety, aesthetic, and quality of life values that make Milton such a desirable community. Number 3, I am concerned with and opposed to any proposed changes that would reduce, relax development requirements, restrictions, buffers, etc., or would increase allowable buildable space or density within the 5 Acre road zone. Since the 5 Acre road zone is located immediately adjacent to 5 Acre, Lake Laurel, and Crooked Creek, I would like to see restrictions that ensure that future development is limited to that which would be compatible with the existing adjacent uses. Specifically, I am concerned and potentially opposed to the following items from Article 7B. Delete 5 Acre road zone density requirements for 10,000 square feet per acre. And item K, 5 Acre road zone deleted special public frontage requirements, 20-foot landscape buffer. And that ends that comment.
And was that in support or opposed or,
That was in support.
okay, that was
And
in
then
support.
this next one is in support, and it's Kyle Offrey. Can come to the podium now.
my assistant with me. Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Kyle Offrey. No. My name is Kyle Offrey. I live at 405 Acre Road. This is Kenna Offrey, my not legal assistant. Stay there. All right. As a resident who values the unique character and future vision of Milton, I want to first recognize and appreciate the thoughtful updates to the Deerfield form-based code. The work done through the Deerfield implementation plan by Bob and his team reflects a clear commitment to balanced, forward-thinking development that protects the integrity of existing neighborhoods, preserved natural buffers, and promotes pedestrian safety along key corridors like Highway 9. That said, I am here tonight, with a sincere concern and respectful question regarding the current development proposal along 5 Acre Road, because all of these great changes, from my understanding, don't affect the current plat application that we are going to be talking about on May 28th. The city is aware that the planned expansion of Highway 9 will directly impact buffers, access points, and setback requires along this corridor. Based on the newly adopted zoning code, townhomes are no longer permitted on the 5 Acre Road zone, and the special public frontage requirements include the now deleted 20-foot landscape buffer will be materially altered or eliminated due to the road widening, sidewalks, median, etc. While this plat application may technically today comply with the conditions, it is my understanding that the approval would result in immediate non-compliance with the new implementation plans. This presents a case of anticipatory non-compliance where we are considering approving a project that will legally conflict with our city's future design standards, infrastructure, and zoning integrity. So this raises a pivotal question. Why would we approve a project today that we know will violate the city's own plan and codes tomorrow? Rather than push forward with an approval that would undermine community and public input and future code enforcement, I respectfully hope you guys would recommend or consider, at a minimum, a pause on any approval of the 5 Acre plot until the final Highway 9 expansion plans are fully revealed and integrated into the site assessment. This would allow for more fair, transparent, and future-proof decision that reflects the long-term vision of the city of Milton. This is not an opposition to the Deerfield plans. It is an invitation to lead with the intention and integrity and to align our current decisions with the futures that you all have created and worked so hard to design. Some ideas were, how about cluster homes like that have been designed across from Cambridge High School, or 4 to 6 larger single-family homes that we would be open to having access to 5 Acre Road and removing the access from Highway 9 so we can remove that whole debacle. And obviously some other things that were just brought up were a 40-foot buffer before the residential homes. All these new ideas are great, but from our understanding, it is excluded in the current plat application, which doesn't really make any sense to any of us. So I hope you take this opportunity to protect Milton's vision and ensure that every development along 5 Acre Road reflects the standards, safety, and aesthetics that we all value in our neighborhood. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is
Yeah,
there
we do not have
anybody-
any more comments.
Okay, I will close the public hearing. Do any of the commissioners have any questions? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
You want for?
Robin. So can you just give some context? I mean, the thing that stood out to me tonight is there's a lot of conversation about 5 Acre Road area. What's the history and why it was specifically called out in our code in the past? That's number one.
Right.
And then the number two would be, to Mr. Offrey's point, what is keeping it is table note number 5, where townhomes are not permitted in 5 Acre Road. So what prevents this code from having an effect on the current proposal by the developer?
So I'll do the easier, or at least shorter question. Your second question. The applicant has officially applied for the preliminary plat. It has been reviewed by the city departments and community development. So that kind of gives them a right to stay with what is currently in the code. So that gives them their legal right to be able to ask for that. So that's why,
So it's grandfathered.
yes, basically a type of grandfathering, because it's what they're proposing, whether people agree with it or not, is if it can be developed correctly is by right. So, that's the reason why. And then in regards to the history, prior to the adoption of this northern part of the form-based code, which was adopted, and I don't have the dates right in front of me, so please forgive me if I'm not exactly right, but I believe it was in 2014 or 15 that the form-based code of north of Bethany Bend was approved. But prior to that, before it was done, there was a Highway 9 North vision study. And in that study, there were multiple meetings in general about that area. But then there were two study areas. One was 5 acre. The other one was what Mr. Offrey mentioned, were the single family homes across from Cambridge High School. So they were dealt with in two different ways. It was decided for 5 acre road that there should be a conversation and deliberations between the property owners in 5 acre with the 5 acre lots and the property owners at that time with the 2 acre lots, the 4 lots that front on Highway 9. And in regards to the piece across from Cambridge, it was decided that the developers wanted to just go ahead and try for a rezoning, and that zoned what we call a neighborhood unit plan. And that was all kind of worked through between the community and through the rezoning process. So during the Highway 9 North Vision Study, this sub area had different meetings. I think there were 3 or 4 meetings. They're in that report, and I apologize. I just saw an email from Judy asking to forward you all the link on the website to that visioning study, and there's some detailed notes about those different meetings with the 5 acre group of people. And so there were a set of agreements that were set through those discussions. And so when the form-based code, the Deerfield north of Bethany Bend, was adopted, those agreements or conditions were embedded into the code. And so that's why on the map, it has a 5 acre road zone. And then as you saw, as I went through the code, there were many mentions of 5 acre and exceptions and special situations just for them. So instead of going through a rezoning, they chose to go through this process to be included into the form-based code for the future.
Okay, that's helpful.
Robin, as I recall, only on that group of homes across from Cambridge, we had a strong feeling in the Planning Commission. We were against that, and it went to council and was approved.
Yep.
Just to be clear.
That's helpful too.
Any other questions, Trey? Brent?
No.
Kurt?
I did have one more just
Okay.
as a follow-up.
Yeah.
So in Article 7B, it says delete 5 acre road density requirements of 10,000 square foot per acre. You said what I'd like to know is what is the delta, like what is the net
Yeah,
effect
so let me
of
go
that?
back.
And I don't know that I need real
Yes, so I
specifics. Does it increase the developer's
No,
ability to?
it's
be more
basically the
dense?
same. I need to double check I don't have it in front of me because I did not, wait, is it number 7? Units per acre. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. Yes, it's in here.
Yeah.
Okay, so T4 by right is 5 units per acre. So if you think about, this is just 3.87, I'm just going to round it. It's 4 acres, 4 times 5 is 20. So actually it would be a little bit less, maybe by 1 unit. So I think that was, and then also for non-residential, 5 times 2250 is whatever, 11,000 square feet per acre. I mean, it's whatever they came out with. So you'd have to do the math. I can't really speak to about the non-residential.
I think you think I'm smarter than I actually am, following all the math.
But as
So
far as
does it
residential, it's
increase-
very close. It may be like 1 unit or 2 units less if it was the 5 units per acre, because you do 5 times 3.87.
So if we approve this, it increases or
It
decreases
would
the
decrease
density?
maybe by 1 or 2.
Okay, thank you.
But also, that's, to be honest, you don't really, it's hard to do single family at 5 units per acre. I think 4.5 is pretty tight. So with deleting townhomes in the future, you're really going to get something less dense than 5 units per acre probably.
Okay.
As a follow-on to that, though, Robin, there was also a proposal to increase the lot width from 18 feet to 28 feet. And with the buffers, that may indicate then that may reduce the number of
Exactly.
units.
Yeah.
So it's
For
not
ten-
so much the density change, but the lot width change that would affect how many units they
Yeah,
could put.
I would say that if you were even going to do a product that was similar to across from Cambridge, I think I looked at, actually, I looked at another development and I think it's like 41 feet lot width for, oh, I know, it was Kensley off of Webb Road. So everybody loves Kensley. It's a great product. And their lot width was 41 feet. So it kind of becomes a non-issue for this area if you say you can't do townhomes in T4, but in other areas like T5 or T6, it's going to beef up and make larger townhomes in other areas.
And just to follow on that, and maybe press upon our city architect, 18 feet in reality is a room and a hallway.
It's a single car garage and a door.
Yeah.
And to be honest,
Yeah.
nobody develops 18-foot wide townhomes here. So I think the lease is maybe 22 or 24, but nonetheless, I think it's just a way to be able to ensure that the townhomes are wider and more significant. I can say my brother has a townhouse in Georgetown and his width is exactly 18 feet, but he has no garage and that's a 200-year-old townhouse. So, yeah.
Okay. Got a couple questions on the incentive portion of this.
Okay.
Because right now, the way I understand it, T5 is 9 units per acre.
Yeah. Let me, do you want me to
Yeah,
go
pull
to
the
the
chart up.
chart?
That'd be great.
Yeah. Oh, it's at the bottom. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I got
Same
it.
thing. Okay, in the second or fourth.
Thank you.
So, okay, looking at T5, it says 9 units per acre
Oops, sorry. I'll get to it. There you go.
by right.
Yeah.
So if they commit to open spaces, they get 10% increase from, to 20%. So,
Yeah.
so they get a,
There
So-
is no incentives in the T4 at all.
oh, I'm sorry, the T5 I'm looking at. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
mentioned it. So they'd get 1 extra space. They get a 10% bump from the 9 to 10 units then. Is that the way we should look at this?
It's a 10% of the ratio, not, I'm sorry. I
So
don't-
10% of 9 is 0.9, so that'd be another unit? Am I looking at that correctly or not?
No, let's say if
it's a residential,
you had
non-residential
100
ratio.
units and it was 50-50, and if you did the public amenity, you get 10% residential ratio, so then it goes from 50-50 to 60 residential, 40.
Okay,
So that's 60 units of residential, 40 units of non-residential.
and so the same if they do public access and trails.
Right, all that is calculated
So
the
that's how you
same.
get the 70-30.
Right.
Okay, and then plus another 3 units per acre on top of the 70-30?
But that's
If they do
only
park-
in T6. We don't have the incentive for Oh, I'm sorry, we do. Oh,
Yes, so for
yeah, we do,
T5, so
the
they
parking
could,
structure. You're
so you get
right.
a 70/30 plus 3 additional units per acre.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Same with T6, the 5% bump. So T6 just goes to, 50, 50, 55, 60, and then they could get up
And-
to 65 if they do the,
And to be honest, the need for additional units per acre really hasn't, like, we've been working with different developers in different scenarios. And really the need isn't so much the units per acre as it is more the need for the ratio change from 50-50. They need more residential for the development overall.
and we may talk about this, but the long term, that ratio affects our long-term income for the city, correct? If all of
Well,
a sudden
and I
now
think-
we're at 70/30, if we're at 30% commercial. And
So,
I think we've
and-
got the financials later.
yeah, unless you want to get into it now.
No,
I
just,
mean-
we'll do it then. But again,
Okay,
that,
yeah.
my bigger concern is going forward, we're giving up a good percentage of our,
So our
commercial, right.
analysis is that we aren't. So,
the argument is we're not.
We can
Correct,
jump in.
we're
So
not.
what we targeted was 20% ratio for commercial taxable income. And
Mhm.
we did do the analysis, and the way we've presented everything and the proposed build-outs, this would target and make us meet the 20%.
Even with going to 70-30 and 65-35?
That's correct.
Okay, but it still would not be as much if we held the ratios. If we held the ratios at 50/50, we would get more income, not worried about 20% from commercial. We wouldn't get any more income on the commercial than residential. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I mean, if you keep it at 50/50, after studying this for a whole year, that if we don't change some of these ratios, that we will just have no development occurring because
Yeah, you've got a couple of these where you're not getting anything today. Right.
you're not going to get any development come in because everybody we spoke to, unless we try to do it. So then staff came up with our own concepts, and then developers came in with concepts, and we looked at the balance, even graphically on the site, and we said, okay, this 70/30 really is the target. It's the magic number that will induce development and get us to the 20% commercial tax base that we're looking to do.
Okay. I get, my concerns always been, is this being short-sighted? This is a 40 to 50-year decision for the city in our, playing with our economic engine.
Yeah, no,
That
I
always called it
understand.
that. So the more we decrease that, the less economic engine we have. Are we going to really regret that in 20, 30 years when we're not having the cash flow? We're front loading it with a lot of the building permits and a lot of that. So we're getting cash now, but are we going to regret that when we start getting less taxes going forward annually? That's my only real concern.
That's why we looked at it and we said, look, the target should be 20%. And they said, Bob, work out all the scenarios and all the concepts and make sure we're hitting that 20% at full build out. And that's why we looked at it and said, yeah, we'll be hitting that 20%. That was our goal to hit.
Okay. All right. And then the only other thing I had was, and you actually read it on page 827 when it talks about all residential units must be accessed from a conditioned interior hallway. Should be an air conditioned hallway, or what's a conditioned? Is that a known term?
It's
A conditioned
a
hallway?
technical term. It's conditioned, meaning that we don't want garden apartments.
Okay.
So and they have
could
so
be
many.
heating or air
They have so
conditioning.
many different variations on this stuff now, but the idea is that you're in, the hallways are interior with a conditioned space, meaning heating and cooled.
Yeah.
So that you don't have these, the style of garden apartments, we have the exterior stair and you walk and then the units are off this open hallway. We've eliminated all of that because it's Milton and we don't want any of that architecture to be in Milton.
Should that be added, or is that in our definitions, or should that be added to our definitions so that if we call out a conditioned hallway? I don't,
Well, for conditions.
It's something I was not familiar
That's a normal.
It's an industry term. I
It's
mean,
in-
if
yeah,
you,
you don't-
yeah,
yeah.
condition space would be.
all right, that was kind of all I had.
Brian?
No questions from me?
Just to follow up one more on the development question. So is what you guys are proposing now, is that in line with that work session that we had that day with city council, where we were talking about these ideas? Is
Yes.
this kind of in line?
This is exactly in line with that.
Exactly in line? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and we met with council on Monday and they asked the same question. They said, Bob, are you in line with the joint session that we had between planning commission and the council? And I said, it is.
Boy.
Okay. The only other, yeah, just going through some of these specific proposed changes, kind of like Kurt's one question, I can run through a couple of them. Just to make sure. So let's see, page 772. For 2D, you know, where it's in 2DI, it says,
Wait, let me get there. I'm sorry. 772, okay.
yeah, so 2DI, and again, the one general one was, again, do we need to define anything? I know we got civic building in D, but then in I, it's not capitalized, you know, that same question throughout.
Yeah, they always shrink.
Okay.
It's that's a defined term in
Okay.
the definitions. So,
Got it.
yeah.
And then 2DIC, it says provide associated parking. So is that broad? Does it need to be more specific as to what the specific parking requirement may be that's needed if they do provide civic building or civic site?
It would still fall under the 3.5 per thousand.
Well, I think what he's saying, what is it referring to? I
Yeah,
think
it just
maybe
says
to be more
associated parking.
Provide associated civic building parking, right?
I see what you're
Maybe?
saying. Yeah, we can
To be
clean that
more,
up.
huh?
Question as to what associated.
Yeah, what does associated parking mean?
Yeah, yeah, I think he's right. I don't think we should say associated. We should say provide parking is required
Okay,
because there is no associated parking.
okay.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then, let's see here. Moving on to, so that same, so 773. Number 4,
Okay.
it says, I just didn't understand. It said allowed within, you know, section 7B18, have application to any site.
So basically, it's just saying it only applies to the Deerfield form-based code. Have application to
incentive.
any site. So it's kind of like two double negatives, maybe.
Where
In
are
no
we?
event may any component of the development incentive allowed within what we just talked about have application to any site not in the Deerfield form-based code area of the city. What I get out of it is it only applies to Deerfield form-based code, right?
I'm trying to find where we're.
It's at the back page 7-73, which is.
Okay.
Is it better to be direct and just say
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
rather than
exactly. I
try
was
to
just gonna
the
say, yeah,
negative?
make it more direct
Or
instead of,
apply instead of
You think
have,
we could just reword it to
Yeah,
to
I
be
think you
more
need to
direct
reword
and say
that.
it only applies?
or just say
Why,
apply.
why be negative with it?
Yeah.
Right? We could
You
reword
could,
this to
it
just,
only applies to the Deerfield form bit or to
Okay.
the,
See, so any component of the development incentive allowed within, right?
yeah, this shall only, the development incentives shall only apply within the Deerfield form-based code. I mean, I'm,
yeah, pretty straightforward. But I agree, it shouldn't be a negative. It should be- It's easier.
right,
We'll change that.
okay. Next one was 776.
Okay.
Number
Okay.
5. So I don't know if soft trails, is that something that's defined or industry known, or does it need to be more specific as to what's considered a soft trail?
We define that in the urban design manual, but maybe we should reference it. I think it would be cleaner and just say soft trails as defined in the urban design manual. Can we add that, Robin?
Yep.
Because that's really where we're referencing it back to.
Okay.
What page was that for my reference?
That's page 7-76 at the bottom.
For my own benefit, as a soft trail, is that basically just dirt, natural dirt? Or are we talking like,
We have different options in the urban
Rubber
design
pellets
manual, and
or-
it clearly defines like the width of the trail, the amenities that go on with the trail to identify it as a trail, the trail lengths, how they should link to two public roads and can't dead end. They have to have lighting. So, so that we try to do that. And then we even say that you have to have two unisex bathrooms along with the trail. And you have to have a trailhead, which is an identifiable feature that staff would approve that actually says you're on the trail. Because a lot of times we have all these trails, and unless you identify them and people know that it's actually that trail, nobody even knows it's a trail, and it doesn't have a name or an identity. So the whole idea was we really wanted to strengthen the trails, give them identities, give them names, give them amenities. And this way, when people are on them, and this way, if the community sees people on them and it's going through their development, that they understand that that's a public trail, and that people don't start saying, well, wait, why are these people on my, in my development? So, if you want the incentive and you're going to do this, then you have to clearly identify, per the design manual, that this is open to the public and you can't close it up, and you have to maintain it in good condition, and you have to allow the public to utilize it as a trail. It has to be identified as a trail.
Specifically to materials that soft surface, the softer surface.
Right.
Not paved.
nor is it dirt? Is dirt defined as a soft trail? Or are we talking about like rubber pellets kind of?
Yeah, it'd be more, well, if you want to.
Or wood chips.
describe it a little bit on what you
Mulch.
put in there.
So one of the main components of the trail is that it complies with the other trails as defined by Public Works for the city of Milton. So it's consistent throughout the city and not just Deerfield. Although there will be Deerfield specific branding to the signage and the trailheads, but the trail complies with the standards for trails throughout the city of Milton. So a big component of that is ADA accessibility, which does really guide the type of materials that you use. So there are going to be concrete sections, and then there will be natural sections allowed, but they have to be ADA accessible. So in other words, something that a wheelchair. So that really defines. I don't have in front of me the exact called out materials, but it is consistent throughout what Public Works has throughout the city.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Granite dust, that kind of thing.
Yes.
or,
So there's
you know,
yes.
Nothing
so-
loose that you wouldn't be
It
able to
is-
get a wheelchair over.
right, and not slate, because slate becomes a mess. But things that can stay well defined on the trail, but have a natural look, but also comply, so you can get grants for
Got it.
accessibility.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so the urban design manual has that covered
It does.
It does.
Okay.
It does.
and
Yep.
That's
And
what you'll be looking
complies with
at
Public
on the
Works.
6th.
okay.
Next.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And it complies with Public Works. So they've reviewed it extensively to make sure that it is all in alignment with how things are being implemented across the city of Milton when it comes to trails.
But it's a good point. When we meet on the 6th, which is next week, I think I'm going to make a note to make sure that we specifically
Right.
review that. Because the whole idea was to have trails in these buffers, but to keep them soft looking so that people can bicycle ride on them and wheelchair on them. But, it's not like a hard surface. So it maintains that buffer look. But I'm going to make sure we
Yeah,
highlight that
right.
for next week.
Okay. All right. So next one I had was 782. And this was just, let's see, 7B36B5. I just wanted to make sure linear parks was defined somewhere.
It is. That's
Yeah.
one of the items that's the one of two new definitions. Yes.
Okay. All right. Then. All right, next one is 789.
Okay.
This is F1B.
Okay,
Third line, I think maybe you should just take out the word with,
okay.
and then,
You concur?
I had that one.
that one too.
It's a
And then-
dueling
As did I,
attorneys.
as did I, that I believe that's it.
They teach us that in law school.
I-
So then the last line, so multifamily functions, again, is multifamily functions like a defined term that everybody would know?
Is it
'Cause it's not
functions or?
capitalized.
Yes, it's defined, I mean, it's categorized. There's really only one multifamily. It's a defined, we will go to chapter 8 and it should be in there. So, I mean, it's not together with functions, but multifamily is defined.
Yeah, but I agree, maybe we should take out functions. and
Yeah.
Just say multifamily development, or
Okay.
however we define multifamily.
What, yeah,
units.
exactly. Whatever you have
Maybe just say
defined.
multifamily units
Right.
or something, because functions is,
Yeah.
totally agree. I'll just say multifamily uses. Yeah.
Uses.
Okay.
Does the
so we'll
form-based
leave
code
uses,
talk
just
about
add
things in the
uses.
terms of functions?
Let me, I mean,
So
I just don't remember.
I'd have to get the,
maybe
Definitions.
multifamily use.
What word are we settling on?
well, I think it's functions. We're just gonna, let's get back with you. If there is something defined or talked about within the form-based code, we'll leave it, but if not, then we can take it away and just say
Uses.
uses, so.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. So let's see what else I had. Okay, then moving on now to Article 8, so 825.
okay,
So D2A3A, last one on that page.
okay.
So number one, like after the word townhomes in the fourth line, should it be like concurrent with townhomes being built? You know, if there's a concurrence thing with the non-residential being built, concurrent with townhomes being built. And then it says shall be determined at the time of the approval of preliminary plat, but was unsure as to like what's being determined.
The concurrency, like whether, a percentage of concurrency, like for every 100 units, you have to, develop 25% of the non-resident. I'm just throwing this out, but please don't, and then the next 100, another 25% of non-residential. It would just be determined and, whatever would work between the developer and the discussion. And that's what I mentioned, that you would see a preliminary plat, so you would also have some input and recommendations to the director about how it would be concurrently developed.
But can I ask Commissioner, I think you got a strong point, because should we be more specific and say like CO, right? So that they don't just go and pull a permit and then they start getting all the COs for the resident. The whole idea here is that we didn't want them to build all the residential. That's the intent, right? I don't want them to build all the residential and not do the commercial. But I want to make sure the commercial just doesn't get a building permit pulled and it never really goes up. I want to make sure that we have the commercial constructed when they're doing that. So is there a way to better clarify that for a director or future director to say, look, it's clearly stated in the code that you have to have a physical, completion to that commercial building at some point? Should we, I mean, I know we're not putting in the ratios, right? 20%, 30%, but at what point does a future director actually, what would you feel comfortable with somebody actually saying, okay, that the commercial is built enough? So if the director says, I'll accept 20% of the residential being built, and I want, the commercial being built, whatever those ratios may be, I'm okay leaving it up to a future director, but I want to make sure that it's at least CO'd, that it's not just somebody pulling a permit and getting the whole idea is the protection. So if you want to dive into this some more, I don't mind, because I'm really trying to protect that they build the commercial concurrent or percentages of it, right? So maybe we say, okay, 20% of residential could be built, 20% of the commercial has to be built. So that's what I'm trying to achieve here. I want to make sure I have that concurrency, that I don't get 100% of the residential built and then they walk away and say, oh, well, we took permits, but we never built it. We finished it. We just let them lapse. Meanwhile, they did all the residential, because residential is so lucrative that I really almost want to make sure that we have a concurrency in there that guarantee that some of the commercial gets built along with those percentages of residential. And I didn't put in the percentages because I figured let a director figure that out, whether it's 20%, so that we give something fair to a developer, not to say, all right, initially I think I started saying build all the commercial first, and then we'll let you build the residential. Of course, nobody wants to do that. So then we said, okay, what's that ratio? All right, let somebody figure that ratio. And normally if it's a use permit, the council would figure that ratio. But if we're doing as of right, I want to make sure that the director says, well, wait, the code says I need some concurrency. Somebody has to agree to a ratio. So when we come for preliminary plat, the planning commission would look at it and say, well, wait, what is the director recommending for that ratio? Do we concur with that ratio? Like this, the planning commission say, it's okay, you can build 20% of the residential number of units, but we also want 20% in an area of commercial units. So, but I just want to make sure that how do we dictate not just the percentage, but at what point is it like at C of O? We say, okay.
I like that idea of the COs to
Yeah.
just based upon the agreement with the director prior to construction.
Yeah.
The COs will be issued contingent upon those ratios.
How about if I try this for language?
Okay.
Required non-residential functions must be built concurrent with townhomes, and the timing shall be determined at the time of the approval of the preliminary plat by the director to be contingent on the issuance of certificates of occupancy.
Okay. And I think that will be clearer for future planning commissions to look at that section and say, okay, we're looking at the plat, right? Are we in agreement with what is being proposed by staff as far as this concurrency? And get planning commission to, weigh in on that at time of plat.
Okay. I mean, it's still like, for me, I mean, two things, I guess. One, and I just want to clarify what your intention is. One is the split of what's residential, what's non-residential. Is that somehow being incorporated? Does that need to somehow be incorporated here? And then secondly, the actual building of the non-residential and residential, like you're talking about, in terms of like what percentage they need to have going for non-residential and potentially a same percentage for, residential.
Yeah, I was
whatever.
leaving the
Like those 2
percentage-
points
I
somehow,
was
if you
leaving the
need to incorporate
percentage up
those.
to staff and planning commission, to be fair, right? So let the applicant come in and say, hey, can you let me have 20% of the residential
So-
built, right?
Yeah. And yes, but I think to your first point about, how do you control to make sure they're doing the right ratio, right? That's what you're
Well,
saying.
that's the first thing. I don't know where that,
Well, it's in another section. So when the staff reviews a development plan, we're going to look to see, are they just doing straight 50-50 with no incentives? That's easy peasy. Okay, we got that. And then, okay, we want 10% more because we're giving more open space. So we have to calculate everything. And then we're going to, when it comes to preliminary plat, we'll say, okay, they get 60/40 because they've done X. And so that's already taken care of. I don't particularly want to get entangled into that to here, because to me, it's apples and oranges. And we're going to make sure that the planning commission knows that they're coming in with a 60/40 split, and then you guys figure out, will, help us figure out what the concurrency is.
When that part is taken care of, that is approved, and what is that document?
So that would just be done administratively through the staff. So we do that through this preliminary plat process. So when somebody submits a preliminary plat, that's subdividing property, right? Creating lots. And so they submit it through our portal, and then we have various disciplines review it along with zoning. So that would be the zoning person's responsibility to say, okay, the code says you need to have 50/50. Oh, now they're saying on their site plan, we're providing 10% more civic space or open space. So they get to have 60%. So if you have 100 units, they get 60 units of residential and 40. So it's done administratively. And then when we bring you the preliminary plat, we're trying to make sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. And then you make recommendations to the director. And that's how it's done administratively without the use permit.
But that's on the preliminary plat, correct? I mean,
Preliminary plat,
yeah, the
yes.
preliminary plat. So a part of that preliminary plat, then can this also be incorporated in terms of, what they're constructing concurrently?
Yeah, I think we're going to ask them, hey, part of the ordinance requires you to do things concurrently. I mean, we're not just going to, I think we're going to get feedback from the developer, and they'll say, hey, I want to do 75% residential and 25%, non. And we're like, I don't think that's going to work. So I think that we're going to work with them and kind of come up with a scenario, and then we're going to bring it to you all, and then you can analyze it, and then make recommendations to the director.
My understanding of this particular clause is to try to prevent where we say, okay, you've met it, you have your preliminary plat, you can have 60% non-residential. And so they build all the non-residential and never get around to building the commercial. So it might be one of those that says, okay, you can build, 50, you can build this many units of residential. And then before we're going to let you build any more, you have to build this much non-residential. So it keeps them from just doing all of one and not
Exactly,
another,
yeah.
or
That's
getting
correct.
out of balance. And so where our desired end state is, 60/40 in this case of what they put forward, that they have to keep the commercial pace
Yeah.
and keep it in balance
Not
as they
imbalance,
go,
yeah.
Right.
and have with the preliminary plat, that's one of the conditions of, here's how
Right.
we're going to issue your building, your land disturbance permits and building permits is based on this, but you have to not only build it, you have to take it to
Right.
certificate of occupancy, not a shell.
So what I was initially saying is that I wanted to make sure that it meant that you had your COs, not just building permits issued. Because people can come in, grab a building permit, and you have like 3 years on extensions before you have to actually start construction. So we wanted to make sure that those ratios are concurrency. If it's 20% residentials can be built before and then you need to build some of the commercial. I want to make sure that that's all based on the commercial getting a CO or CFC, certificate of completion.
So you'd end up
That's all
with
I'm
a
saying.
phased construction plan.
Yes.
Yeah, basically,
approved
it's kind of a phased construction plan.
Yeah. And we're not going to issue the permits for the next phase until you finish
Right.
and
Okay.
get your CO on the previous.
So with that said, you want to change some of the text?
Well,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, I know Judy had a
Chairwoman
proposed
Burns-
language. The only thing I would again still
I
add
like
is
her
after the
language.
word townhomes, I would also say being built too. So that way it's concurrently like non-residential being built with townhomes being built. And then, you can add on your language, the
Right.
suggested language about the a certificate of occupancy.
Okay. Yeah, then I'm
So-
okay with it. Sure.
So Madam Chair, if you can give that to me at the end of the,
Yeah,
Yes.
that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Get to the motions. Vic, do you have anything? Or are you done?
Yeah, I'm
submitting?
done. Yeah, I don't have anything else.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
You have some, Fred?
That I missed, on 782 in the Civic, we took out retention and detention areas being used as civic space. I understand that. The next one bothers me. Areas used for permanent water storage. And then we define what permanent water storage is, but I'm not clear what, is that a lake? And if it is a lake, then you gotta have sidewalls, and it's just not clear to me what permanent water storage means.
so, yeah, I mean, let me just make it clear. I think what you said is now we're allowing, if they develop it in this way that's described, can be part of civic space. Because I thought I heard you say opposite to that. But I just want to make sure everybody knows that before we would not allow a stormwater facility, even as beautiful as it is, because Bob has designed some great ones in the city, that they weren't allowed to be counted toward civic space. Now we're saying you can, but only if you meet these regulations. Now Bob can speak to the mechanics of it.
That's it.
But I still don't understand permanent water storage. Is that-
Permanent water storage would be a lake. That would be, water would be permanently in the pond.
So
No.
like Mayfield, like on Mayfield Road,
Yeah.
that is a permanent water storage.
That's it.
Okay,
And a retention pond.
Yes, and it serves as a
detention
stormwater
pond.
facility, yes.
Right.
So
okay,
Robin,
so it can be a lake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's, yes, it could be a lake, it could be a pond,
Lake.
yes, a pond, a lake.
the way I
Yeah,
read
that's the
this,
whole
it
idea is to
doesn't
like-
preclude it from being like an underground storage, though.
No, it does, you can't have it underground. I mean,
It doesn't
if it was
say that.
underground, then it's
Does-
okay. It could still be a civic space because you could have, right?
We have that here at the, it can be a park on top of the water storage, but the point of the permanent was that it isn't dry sometimes. There are some
Right.
types of stormwater
Exactly.
retention
Okay.
It's
that
just
are dry. This
Okay.
is to say, this is a stormwater, if it's acting as stormwater retention, it's got water in it
Full
and
time.
full time. And I think an example is Thompson Park in Alpharetta, which is close to Avalon. That is stormwater retention.
Well, we have one at Mayfield.
And one at
One at
Mayfair
Mayfield.
too, like, but you know, I'm
And the one
Something
up at
that's-
Birmingham Crossroads.
right.
Yeah,
Birmingham
Birmingham
Crossroads. Birmingham
Crossroads.
Crossroads, exactly.
Kinsley.
So that's,
Kinsley.
Where I got confused is when you talk about lighting, landscaping, seating, steps, then that eliminates anything about retention or.
No, it doesn't.
No.
it does not. It's just the way the walls are sloped, which is regulated in the stormwater there are other regulations that mandate how you can do those things and also have it as stormwater retention, which don't happen in your code, correct? They happen in other state stormwater
did-
regulation, design regulations.
But
that
we
the
did
city
say
enforces.
a slope of 4 to 1, which is a
Right.
very gentle slope.
Yes.
So it's going to be graded and grassed. It's not going to be concrete pond.
Right.
It's going to, there may be an outlet structure.
Mayfield
Yeah.
Mayfield is the example.
is
That's
what?
exact-
Is the example.
I put a walkway around it. We
Oh,
put
yeah.
it like a dock. It
Been
looks
there
like a
several
lake
times.
when it's really a stormwater management facility.
But-
But we said, if you enhance it with all those amenities and you can make it really look like a nice lake for the community
Mhm.
to enjoy, then we don't mind counting it as open space because I'm trying to induce that. I'd like to see some more nice water features and lakes
Right.
and things for people to enjoy.
Okay.
I have some.
Okay,
All right,
It was so interesting because I have it on a lot of the same pages as Sumit, and I was like, oh, and another thing. So on 772,
okay, let me get there.
on the second column under D, in your presentation, you were specific that the civic building itself needed to be approved by, or the civic site had to be approved by council. And this doesn't state that. It just says it has to be an approved city plan, where your presentation called it out, that they're specifically saying, yes, I'm going to give you credit for your
Right.
recreation center or whatever. So I don't know if we need to add another letter that says approved by city council.
Let me see, I'm sorry, I've got these all over the place. I'm not
I've
sure.
got it, Robin.
Okay, okay.
good point.
Okay, that was one.
That's what we wanted, city council to approve. it.
Yeah,
It doesn't
okay, that's fine,
specifically
that's
say
fine.
it, so I think she's correct.
Okay, on 776, I think this has come up in another development where we wanted the idea of trails that would be in the buffers. And one proposal came in and they put the trail right on the lot line, which effectively put it in the neighbor's backyard. So I don't know if you want to have any requirement that it be at least 10 feet from the lot line, or,
I think it would be, to be honest, it would be by the approval, I mean, we would look at it. I mean, from a staff perspective, I don't think we would allow it to be at the lot line or at the property line. I mean, you could, I guess we could say that, but,
or do we need to say location to be approved by staff?
Yep.
Okay.
And again, can I ask, is that something that will be on a preliminary plat or it won't be? I
Well,
mean,
this is a trail through a landscape buffer, and we don't see the landscape plans in the
we don't
preliminary
see it
plat.
in the
right, so it might
preliminary
be
plat,
the city
so-
arborist, maybe?
So,
Well, we would ask for that on the LDP, or certainly a part of that landscape.
Yeah, by
plan
staff.
trail.
by
I'm broad enough with city staff, just, but
Okay.
the idea that
I just wanted to make sure.
there is
'cause
a
it's-
check and balance. You don't get to just pick where you put it.
They won't see it. It's
On
one point.
782, we struck the language regarding public frontage related to 5 acre. What's the default if we strike
So
that?
then if it's default, then it's going to be a linear park. So the requirements of transit, no sidewalk is required in the public frontage. So, so it would just be the default of what is required otherwise,
In T4.
which it says on 83, the page before it says specific to zones T4 permissive, T5, T6 for all property and lots located adjacent to public rights of way. All residential uses must be set back a minimum of 40 feet from the edge of to 4. It's like, okay,
40 foot.
wherever 4. I am so sorry.
Are we on G? Is what it
Yeah,
would
so
be?
it starts on 83 and then goes to 84. It's the
Oh,
bottom,
okay.
7B38A, private frontages. So whatever the next page keeps on going, and I should have just put this in
To the right of way.
Oh, I see. Okay.
should be in a notebook instead of me being very confused.
Okay, so it defaults to what's on the previous pages for T4.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And that's ample in your feeling? You're feeling that that's ample space on the frontage then?
Well, that's what it's been
Instead of
designed.
20, we put in 40.
Oh, it's even bigger.
Right?
Okay.
But remember that the 40 linear park, we could take the sidewalk that's normally on a public right of way
And put it
and
through
then
the,
put it inside that
okay.
linear park. So we kind of created that. But
780.
It's doubling it.
Yeah, great. 783 in the second column, when we talk about trails, and we talk about both ends must connect. I'm trying to think of a scenario where we might have a lake in the middle of the property and we really just want a trail that, let's say, goes from the street and loops down to the lake and back. But you're saying it would have to have 2 points of access from, you could have a loop around the lake, but you'd have to have
But you
it
have to have 2 points of-
extended
Yep.
to 2 streets.
Yeah, because we didn't want any dead-end trails. We wanted to
Even,
make
or
sure that we
even if it's a
have-
loop?
We want to make sure that we have 2 public access points.
Okay. So
Because
you-
the whole idea of the main trail plan is that we continue to trail into other communities and other neighborhoods. So I didn't want to dead end any trails. So if a developer comes in and just kind of dead end loops it, the whole idea is to, you're on your bicycle, you can go through that development and then on to another public right of way or another development.
Yeah.
You continue the trail. So
Or-
nobody can dead end the trails.
Or 2 sets of people could have access to the loop. Okay. Next page. Jumping all the way now to page 7-116, and I think I heard you say you're deleting that table at the top of 716. Is that correct? I heard you say delete, and I didn't know if it was,
Yes,
Everything
it
was-
has to do with the height. So this one, so that section on 116 has everything to do with T6. Now the footnotes will travel to the previous page.
okay.
And I wanted to clarify, I did actually do it when I was asking Bob about office and hotel uses, maybe up to 8 stories. All other uses shall not exceed 4 stories. So I already had it in there. I
Yeah,
just-
I have it in there. We just have to get rid of the graphics. is what
Right,
she
yeah,
said.
but when you accept the changes, it'll be gone.
It will be gone.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, on 7-119, I didn't quite understand this whole 4 guest rooms mixed together. Help me with this understanding of building unit function exchange.
So basically, that's just the density. So residential is 1 unit per building unit, 1 dwelling unit for each building unit. So, or you're just asking specifically about the lodging.
I'm more on the lodging and trying to understand. At first I thought, oh, you can only have 8 hotel rooms in a building unit. And then I was like, no, I'm not sure what that means,
So
the
let-
concept
I'll
of
give you
building
an
unit
example.
function exchange.
Let's say if it's in T5, you get 9 units per acre by right, and you have 1 acre. I'm just going to use 1 acre as
Right.
an example. So right now, 9 times 8 is whatever.
72.
Yeah. So that's the number of rooms you get on 1 acre. Okay. So that's kind of when years ago, it used to be 4 units per acre. 4 rooms per unit, but we felt like we wanted to get people to build hotels. Let's build hotels. But, and it's still true that if somebody had 1 or 1.5 acres, that's about the size of most commercial hotels. That's what they use. But in speaking to some of the developers who have a large parcel, like 40 or 50 acres, to get 8 units in a mixed use development, you don't get very much non-residential counting toward your non-residential, because hotels is not considered residential. It's considered non-residential. So if you halved it, then if you wanted 90 rooms, you would need double the amount of acreage. And so it works better in a bigger mixed use development.
I think
It
what was
actually
throwing me
was-
was the idea of a building unit being a building, and it's really just it's really almost times the number. Okay.
Right. So if you go to page 122, which is the code table 11, by right, it says how many units per acre. And then this is the quotient that you use is the building unit function. So if you
It's a
were in
multiplier.
T5, it's 1 times 9. So you get 9 dwelling units per acre.
So,
Yeah.
I was going to ask Paul. Paul, we better off not, because now she's correct in a way. We have been using the word building unit, but in the formula, it actually says density unit. So is that what's confusing? I mean, I think it should be
Yes.
consistent with the definition of density unit, because it's really a density unit. There is no definition for a building unit.
There you go.
So can we change the building unit to density units? Because that's how I think you describe them always as, in the table, it's a DU, it's a density unit.
I don't.
Big
see-
change, but I
mean,
think it
I
leads
don't
to.
have a problem on principle, but I don't see where we're talking about density units. Where does it say density units?
I think on
It
the
says for
table.
each building unit, but I think the chair is saying that,
You're talking about the footnote.
He's
only.
looking at the footnote on 7/2/19.
yeah, it says building units, and I think
119, sorry.
she's really saying, well, what's a building unit? It is a little confusing, right? It's a density unit.
Well,
That's-
but everything is based on building, everything in referencing is on building units.
It is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't really want to go and change one thing and then.
Yeah, ripple affect it, but it's
Okay.
the
Yeah.
idea, yeah.
Okay.
So for every,
Just asking, right? Because it does say density units.
or to think of, okay. As long as you understand it, to me, it was a little confusing, but
Okay,
I don't
yeah.
need to be educated right now. And then I have in section 8,
Okay. Use provisions, you mean?
use provisions. I have a question related to 819. The regulating plan would indicate that the church stays in T2 in the proposed regulating plan, but a church in T2 is a use permit. So obviously they're there now, they're grandfathered in.
Well, yeah.
What might trigger them to require a use permit for church functions?
So right now, they have, let's say they have 50 acres. I don't know what they have. And they're going to cut down to 20 acres or 25 acres. If this gets passed the way it is, they need to come back for a new use permit because their density has increased. So they're approved for so many square feet per acre. And now they've chopped off a portion of their acreage and because they're still T2 for the church building, they need to come back for a new use permit when they sell off their property, if they get to sell off their property to be developed.
And they understand that?
Yeah.
And
I think they
and
may
we
have
now know
forgotten-
we have another use permit
Yes.
coming. Okay.
So the scenarios have changed over time, but in the very beginning, I said, if you stay T2, when you take off acreage, you're going to have to come back and get a new one. Just like a little similar to Ebenezer Church in 2020.
Right.
Remember how they added acreage?
Mhm.
It's like, okay, well, your density's changed, so you need to come back and make everything right.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that was approved.
Yeah.
Monday night.
Okay, so that, I was wondering if it would trigger, and yes, it will, because they're changing, but it's because they're changing their lot.
Right.
Okay.
So they're shrinking. the
And they're
lot,
okay,
yeah.
and they're okay with that. Okay, on 8-22, I'm trying to refresh my memory, and hopefully Brian can help me with the wording, but because we had heard some proposal on changes to language that said we were okay recommending one, but the one we wanted
Right,
to
you're talking about, yeah.
reject was the companies that wanted to have the storefront to do.
Broke the
Auto broker, yeah.
Okay. So, this is not, in changing the warrants for automobile and light truck sales and leasing, that was the one we recommend they do, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
which
And
it
because
was not
it's primary
forwarded.
business.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're doing it
It's
now.
not the brokerage, I just was double checking. On 8-23, under collecting recycling center, is that only commercial? Because I could see where the city might I drop
Have
off
a
all my
collection.
glass at Bell Memorial, It
So
seems
the
like it's,
city can do what the city wants to do.
okay, so this would be if.
Or commercial, like if a
Commercial,
company
okay,
wanted to do something, yeah.
But the city can still do that. The city can still do recycling, and we handled that.
Can I point on that automobile and light truck sales leasing? How about golf carts?
So golf carts are not considered automobiles.
Or trucks.
Okay. Where do the sales of those come in
So
as being, which have now moved on Mayfield? Where
So-
there was sales,
So we don't
An
have
office.
we don't have a category just for golf carts. That would basically come under general retail. So it doesn't, I checked, I mean, a golf cart by definition is not an automobile. So at this point in time, we don't have technically an exclusion for that.
so they moved, but then that would have been approved.
Right, but we also have a requirement that you can't have storage overnight of things that you sell. And so that's kind of what pushed them out here in Crabapple
Yes.
was we said, you can have your office here, but you can't have inventory sitting overnight for a long period of
And
time.
They got
Then
rid
they
of the-
moved.
And they also got rid of the signs that were in violation.
Right.
Okay, one more just to clarify, on the regulating plan.
Yeah.
I think you said you want to keep the little call outs to the maximum 2-story building height zone, but strike the maximum 8?
Correct.
No, okay.
Yes. And as well as there's a little piece where the townhomes are, there's another reference to height area, which doesn't apply. It's like by the lake in the T6 across from the old city hall. It's hard to read on this, but
But you're going to remove,
we're going to remove any
you're going
reference.
to remove the dotted line, is that
Yes.
it? And the reference?
Yes. But we're going to make it more clear for the 2-story building height zone in the graphics to make sure we don't lose that requirement.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Did we want to go over real quickly the financial impact?
We could. You want to put it up?
If people interested in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it? Oh, it's not on this one. It's the other one.
Point on the bottom. and it's the
Okay.
last-
That was the one you were pointing to?
Last 2 pages.
Oh, well, I think I lost it.
Although I got all excited,
Oh,
but
it's that
'cause I
one.
misplaced a decimal point for a comma. I thought, boy, on the permit fee generation, that's great.
Oh, okay.
$6 billion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Only 1 billion, 1.3 of construction.
It says $6 million.
Okay, so this will go back to
Exactly.
you. So I'm going to make a point. I'm going to go at the bottom first. So at one point, we thought that we were going to have a 50% ratio of age restricted for townhomes and multifamily. We came to find out legally we can't require that. So the numbers are could be a little bit different based on that, the conditions. But the full build out at 5, 10, 20-year build out, number of residential units, 1,700, square footage of commercial, $750,000, cost of construction, 1.3 billion, permit fee generation, over 6 million, almost 7 million. Total impact fee is, okay, I'm just not used to these big numbers, 23 million. And the real estate tax generation was, and this is what was presented by Bernadette, and we don't
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah, she said it was very difficult to come up with a real estate tax generation projection. Because she said that there's the way they figure it out at the county, they also give you, some people have homestead exemptions, some people have senior exemptions. So she said it's almost impossible to figure out what that would be. But we said, well, even leaving the real estate part out, just on the impact fee, the city would make $23 million on full build out. And I said, that's pretty good. That's going to pay for a lot of the amenities that the city's
Yeah.
looking to do, because people do look at us and say, Bob, all this development's coming in, it's going to tax our services, and how's the city going to deal with that? And I said, well, look at the level of impact fee, so that will offset the future services that the city's going to have to incur. So we are getting that addressed. And then just the permit fee generation would be 6 million. So that's going to take a lot of the extra staffing. A lot of what ComDev does is all our salaries are really paid for by permit fees. So what the state says is, you can't charge more permit fees than your expenses. So we can't, people kind of look at us and go, gee, Bob, you built the department up. I said, I know, because the revenue was coming in, and you have to build the department up. Otherwise, we have to start discounting all the permit fees. So it's and it is proportionate. I mean, the number of permits that come in, you need so much staff to do it. So that I guess I'm saying is that the demand on the city, as far as what we're doing, will be addressed by this development, which I thought was important to know that, plus we did look at the ratios and said the commercial portion would meet the 20% target as far as income. So I thought that was important to note too.
But you have to think, if you're expending over $1 billion on construction, that should increase the value of the properties. And much of this there isn't a lot of single-family residential, i.e. homestead likelihood. There might be some other townhome things, but given the amount, even that value with homestead says that's going to be pretty significant.
It's going to be significant. I mean,
Yeah.
I really think we're going to have quite a significant amount of additional tax revenue coming in. Now, remember, the city doesn't make 100% of the value, right? We have a city tax, which is less. The county makes a lot of it.
Yeah.
But and then we have sales tax income too, and the city has done very well in the past on percentages of sales tax that have come in towards the city. So I think we would be continuing to do that as well.
Yeah, and I think if I recall before, we get a little bit of an occupational tax income, but that's like a couple $100,000 at most. But
That's not much.
I think if you're going to expend that much in construction, that you're talking, I don't know how many millions that we should expect the real estate tax to generate.
Yep.
And I'm seeing some nods, so that's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, currently we are losing commercial revenue, so this should shore it up and get it going. And, things in construction and development you get that critical mass built. Like, once we get downtown Crabapple, the critical mass built, all of a sudden it starts self-perpetuating and things start going better and start doing it. And even with uses, I mean, a lot of the uses come in, some people come in and some of the uses got flushed out, but other uses come in so that the market drives the use. The key is vacancy, but even when I looked at Marketplace and over here with Beecham, every time they lose a tenant within 3 or 4 months, because they have to reconstruct and rebuild it, but there's another tenant right behind that tenant. So, and eventually the market will drive the success of what tenants can survive and which ones can't. So we've actually been pretty lucky with our vacancy rate down here. We're doing phenomenal. And it's got a lot to do with the people running it, right? Because we don't drive that. The city doesn't drive that, but we certainly try to help help that along, to try to help those uses out to survive.
Any further questions?
Nope. Good.
I'd like to just thank the Planning Commission. This has been almost a year, and we had a robust community engagement program that Greg, our communications director, and his entire staff ran, and they did a phenomenal job. So I'd like to do a shout out to them because they were just doing a phenomenal job with communications, engaging the community through surveys and events. So this is all really directly resulting from a lot of community input on what the community had asked for. And the community is really strong in supporting it, what we're doing here. So I think this is going to be really well. We're already starting to get a lot of interest from developers because we're ready to almost lift the moratorium next month. And all the developers in lining up saying, hey, we're really happy with where we landed here, and we think that this is going to be advantageous for us and the community. And I think everything is going to really, really do it. So I'm very positive in seeing the level of interest that we have. I think things are going to come right out of the gate, and we're going to start to see some real transformation in Deerfield. I think it's going to become a real destination, with a lot of the community driving it. So I want to thank the Planning Commission because you all have really been helping us out and guiding us the right way and making sure. And a lot of these projects that come in go before you. And so it's never the end, it's the start, because now these projects are going to start coming in. So I just maintain your level of energy because this is the important part now. When the projects come in, to look at them and say, wait a minute, we've been working a year. We know what it is we want. Are these projects really meeting the standards and the Milton-esque feel of what it is we're trying to achieve? I appreciate it. I just want to say thank you all.
Sorry. Will we see anything on the athletic designs and?
Yeah, they did do a presentation on, I think it was Monday night.
Monday
right?
night.
Monday night, they came in and they talked to council with a bunch of concepts and wanted that. Council's feedback was, okay, some of these look good, but we'd like to see some numbers. What's this thing going to cost? And let's get back into
You
what
don't
it
see
is.
it really affecting Deerfield as far as all the homes and the business?
I think it plays right into it. I mean, I think a lot of the businesses that are around it are talking about having things that will support sports facilities, restaurants and things that people would want to go to, shops. So everybody's kind of gravitating to it, saying it's really good. We are trying to put a connection point between Highway 9 and Deerfield to kind of get that extra connection point in there as well. So, I'll talk to Tom with Parks and see if he can come in and maybe next month do a little presentation to Planning Commission and show you what it is that he's been doing. Because it really does look very nice. I think it's going to be a great feature for the city. It's really going to help us out. But everybody around it is kind of knowing it's there. And still, in fact, it's actually attracting more interest. Because I think they look at it as a community draw. Everybody's going to be there, kids are going to be playing, so why not build on that and say, hey, let's have things that would support that. I thought that was really good.
Great. Thank you, and thank you, Robin, for a lot of your hard work on that. I would like to make a motion that we recommend approval of text amendment RZ 25-07 as presented with the following changes. On page 7-72, DC, to strike the word associated and to add I, sub-bullet E, be approved by City Council. On page 7-73, to revise sub-bullet 4 to state any component of the development incentive allowed within section 7B.1.8 only applies to the Deerfield form-based code and not in other areas of the city. On page 7-76, A5, to add a sentence, location of trails to be approved by city staff.
And also, I think you said trails and buffers must be soft trails as defined in the UDM.
Yes, thank you. Back that up. Trails and the buffers must be soft trails as defined in the urban design manual or boardwalk where appropriate, no other hard paved surfaces allowed. Location, period, location to be approved by city staff. On page 7-89, in the second column, F1B, to strike the word with in the third line, and to allow city staff to reword multifamily functions to another word of their
Maybe use.
choosing.
Well, I've deleted.
If
but
appropriate.
We use the term function in some of the tables. Multifamily isn't one of them. There's a residential.
So maybe we change it to use then.
Just use.
Yeah, okay.
You want me to go ahead and say use, or I
Yeah,
was
we'll
leaving
go
it up
for
to you
use.
guys?
Okay, we'll do use.
Okay, back that up to change it to strike the word functions and put in uses. I'm switching to 8. Am I missing anything in 7, Sumit?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. In section 8, page 8-25, under D2A, little 3A, to insert the word after townhomes being built and the time, let me just read the whole phrase. To required non-residential functions must be built concurrent with townhomes being built, and the timing shall be determined at the time of the approval of the preliminary plat by the director to be contingent on the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Byrd and seconded from Commissioner Edwards. Do we have any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. That's unanimous.
I think you should be complimented on the changes.
Great, thank you. There are no new business items or old business items. Do any of the commissioners have anything they would like to say before we move on? I know where are we with the May 28th quorum?
Commissioner James, I was waiting to hear. I don't know if you tried to contact me or left a message. If you did, I'm sorry if I.
That is okay. Yeah, I'll be out
You'll be out.
that day.
Okay. So that determines that we won't have a quorum. So then should we?
We've already approved a specially called meeting for June 4th. When do you, things may change. Maybe somebody will be able to come. When do you need to say you're going to cancel? Or do we cancel tonight?
We
No, we'll
have
say
4
it's
people saying that they're not going to be here.
Right. Is it better for you to be able to just go ahead and cancel it so
Yeah.
you can send out the letters to say it'll be June 4th?
Yes,
instead?
that's fine.
Right. And then in addition to part 2 of the
Preliminary plat.
public hearing on the preliminary plat, do we have anything else
No.
for that? Okay. One other question I had, there was a House bill, I think it's 614, related to
All right, I do have
activity.
an update about the fireworks.
Yes.
Okay, so Ken Gerard, city attorney, is working on it right now. So I think you have to wait till the bill actually gets signed, but we're going to be putting it on. It'll have 2 presentations. It doesn't come to you all because it's outside of the zoning
Oh, okay.
parameters.
Okay.
So it's just going to go for 2 reads. He's already written it up. It's very specific and legal. So I don't know when the governor signs it, but
My understanding, he either has to sign it or veto it by May 14th. If he signs it, it becomes law. If he fails to do either, it becomes law on May 14th. And Paul is
Okay.
nodding. I've been paying attention.
I don't have the specific date, but yes, that is.
so
we
let's
should-
say if he signs it on the 14th or whatever, we do have a meeting on May 19th. So I could see it being a first presentation on May 19th and then approved the first meeting in June.
But we don't need to go through CCIM and Planning
Nope,
Commission?
Nope, it's
Okay.
outside of the parameters of zoning, so.
Is everybody familiar with House Bill 614? So House Bill 614 was passed by the House and the Senate, sponsored by our local legislature, and did pass. And in summary, it states that the municipalities have the option to prohibit fireworks within 200 yards of any building, housing, equine. Or is it specific to horses? I think it might say equine. But to that effect of no fireworks near horse barns. The language will be, I'm sure, much more precise when Mr. Gerard presents it, but that's the gist of it.
Great.
Oh, anything else for the good of the order?
Nope.
Anything coming up in June? Just a reminder, we have a joint DRB meeting
Oh,
on May
yes.
6th.
Yes.
Get it on your calendars. And then we'll have May 6th.
So June,
4th, and
we
late June.
will, so far, we have a use permit in June to do a redo or a modification of the land that is included in Little River Farms. Because they're reducing their land, they're coming back to get a new one.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Right.
I believe that'll be in June.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Edwards with a second from Commissioner McNeese to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you all. I gotta.